panel discussion by welcoming the speakers, as together they represent the galaxy of stars from the digital and connected CV space. I invite on stage Ms. Ujjwala Kale, Deputy Director, ARAI. A big round of applause for Ms. Ujjwala. Along with her, I would request Mr. Dayakar Devirai, Vice President, Connectivity Solutions, Daimler Truck Innovation Center, India. A big round of applause for Mr. Dayakar. Also, I will be inviting Mr. Sankalp Rajpurkar, Head of Account Management, Intangles Lab Private Limited. A round of applause for sir. Also inviting Mr. Tanshir Singh, Managing Director, ABC Express. Can we have a round of applause for Mr. Tanshir? Also, I would be requesting Mr. Rahul Sonavane, Head Sales and Services, Kamaz Motors. A round of applause for Mr. Rahul. The moderator of the session will be Mr. Pushan Sharma, Director, Crystal Limited. A big round of applause for Mr. Pushan.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Krishna, for that wonderful presentation. I think that sets the context about what we're going to be speaking over the course of the next 45 odd minutes. We've seen a lot of changes happening around us. We've had the pandemic, we've had a lot of changes on the digital front, and I think the pandemic has really accelerated digital change. And the panel that we have with us, I think is really wonderfully placed to discuss the topic at hand, which is on disruptions using digital connected technologies, ADAS, to name a few. We have OEM from DICV with us. We have people on the service front, on the startup ecosystem who are providing service to the entire transportation industry. We have a regulator as well as certifying testing agency with us. And of course, most critically, we have the customer with us. How can we forget that? Right? So I think we have a wonderful panel to talk about these aspects. Just before we begin the panel discussion, if one were to zoom out and look at the automobile industry, which is developed over various decades, it's been quite a traditional industry till very recently. The stakeholders involved were few. You had the steel manufacturers, rubber suppliers, tire manufacturers, auto component suppliers. And what we've really seen over the last few years is that the number of stakeholders has suddenly increased with the advent of technology. There's a whole service ecosystem that has come in, and that is where the entire ecosystem needs to evolve and reorient itself and achieve its new equilibrium. And which is what we'll be spending time over the next 45 minutes talking about, how these new technologies are going to impact various facets of this industry, right from critical aspects like safety, to revenue, profitability, and efficiency of the overall fleet ecosystem. Because, as a country itself, our logistics costs are extremely high compared to the averages, and efficiency can really play some role in bringing that down, right? So with that in mind, let me start off the discussion by, addressing my question to Dayakar. And Dayakar, if you could, for the benefit of all of us, talk about, these big words of ADAS and telematics, connected. Can you make it a little more relatable for us? What are these technologies that we're talking about, which seem very futuristic? And if you could also throw light on if some of these technologies might become table stake just 5-7 years from now.
Yeah, so I guess, as you said, Pushan, the technology is evolving with a much faster rate than we are expecting. So 5 years down the lane, if we had look back, to see how the technology is transforming in the industry, especially in the commercial vehicle, it's a phenomenal. So the way I see it 5 years back to what I see it now 10 years in the future, it's a tremendous transformation that's going to happen in the industry. So coming from an OE as Daimler Trucks, yes, we have been the biggest OE manufacturer across the globe, and being part of the R&D unit. So we look into technology every day. So when I say this from the three prima facies here, so one, we as OEM, but then there are drivers who are also our customers, and then we have the fleet operators who are also our customers. So So who are driving this and why we are doing what we are doing? Yeah? So this is the basic question that we ask as OEMs to ourselves every day. Yeah? So to have better drivers, yeah, and also we have a lot of issues with the driver that we can talk about it, but also how to make our customers profitable, yeah, and this is always driving us. And the TCO is one of the reason why we want to make our customers profitable here. And to make them profitable, I guess it's the legacy way of dealing things as an OEM will not stand. It's not sustainable for us. And the only change that can bring in more profitability to our customers is technology here. So when I talk about technology, what are these technology? I think many of us have talked about it from the beginning. Yeah. So I heard from Tata, they called it as CESS, yeah, CESS. From Mercedes, we call it as CASE, as from the passenger car side, and from the vehicle side, or commercial vehicle side, we call it as CAE, not the computer-aided engineering, but connected, autonomous, and electric. Yeah. So when I look into these three major pillars, and also I saw from Uno Minda also talking about PACE, which is again the same thing. So it's a reaffirmation to us as a OE that the whole industry is talking about it, and we are also in the right direction here. Yeah? So when it comes to connected, I guess, as Krishna was telling, yeah, so it will be a disruption, yeah, when it comes to connectivity. Of course, we can talk about how in Indian industry it's transforming, but if I look to the Western, it has already made a huge impact, yeah, with the way how fleet owners operate, how the fleet management system works, how the connectivity between the truck to the driver to the operators are having. So we have huge, I think Krishna knows because he's one of our partner here. So we have like Schneider, JB Hunt and Penske who are managing fleets like 20,000 trucks, yeah, or 50,000 trucks. And for them, the efficiency is based on connectivity. And this is where we are getting into. Second thing is on the infotainment part. So it's not just limited to the passenger cars anymore. So we are going disruptively in the way how infotainment would look like within the truck, so that the drivers, I guess in the morning session we heard how to treat our drivers with a lot of dignity and respect. So it's their home. The second home is the cabin of their truck. So how are we going to digitize the entire cabin and make them feel more homely? Yeah? So this is where, as a OE, we are getting into. And of course, autonomous or automated level 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, this is always in the roadmap to make the roads safe. Yeah, that is one of our sustainable thing. And and when I say technology here, it is either ABS or collision, not just warning, but also actively braking, assistant, driver rosiness warning, and assistance here, lane departure, not just warning, but also activation, and things like that. So there is a huge list of technology trends that we are getting into the market here. Yeah.
Thanks, Dayagar, for providing that perspective. And so we've sort of laid, the context of this session. We're talking about connected vehicles. We're talking about also you added infotainment, which is becoming important for drivers. We're talking about autonomous, various stages of ADAS. We're also going to be talking about telematics as well, right? Now I'll move over to you, Krishna, and given that many of these technologies that we're talking about, they're either coming in from the West, coming in from the East, some being indigenously developed. But the context of the Indian market is quite different, right? If you look at the trucks, we have trucks of 180 horsepower, 230 horsepower, very different in US. The width of US is so different, so the distances being traveled are quite different. How do you make these technologies relevant to the Indian market?
Sure. So I think the key thing here to keep in mind is one, there are things which will work as it is. There will be things where you need some customizations, and the good thing is that you don't need to do a whole lot of customization. Where you need to do customizations is where the human factors become a key part. right? Like earlier we were discussing how large fleets in US are managed, right? And how India is mostly small to medium fleets. It's not large by the global standards at least, right? You don't have 10,000 vehicles, not too many at least in India, right? So when it comes to things like the UI designs, for example, I'll give you concrete examples. In a large fleet in the US, for example, you will have like a tiered organization like a corporate with a safety department, a safety director, safety coaches, in addition to the fleet manager, the maintenance people and all of that, right? Now that may not be possible in India because you have smaller fleets. So your UI, for example, in our case, we had to redesign it a little bit, make it more notification centric, to bring people in when needed, because you don't have people monitoring things all the time, right? In US, you'll have somebody like a safety department with some 10 employees are looking at videos all the time. Here, if there's a drowsy driving, we may need to send a notification to a person responsible saying, hey, looks like there was a potential drowsy driving, do you want to check it out? So that's just one example. The other key example is, as Indians, we are very, very value-centric. Cost invariably enters the picture, right? So one key thing we are done with ourselves is to be able to offer solution at multiple price points. It's true with OEs as well, right? Take any OE, they have multiple trucks. In fact, there are differences between the trucks they sell maybe in Germany versus just ones they sell in India, for example, right? In India, they have like a multiple range of trucks. Similarly, with services, you need to come up with the same mindset. Have services which are tiered, and we don't need to look afar. SaaS is all about tiering, customization, right? That's where I think, from a software perspective, we have it a lot easier than OEs, for example.
So thanks, Krishna. Thanks for that perspective. And you mentioned, as Indians, we're very value conscious. And I think I love that about Indians, right? Because it then boils down to the bare bone innovation. All the frills, everything is removed, and it's the bare bone innovation. And what does it do for you, right? Does it give you value in terms of revenue, cost savings, entertainment? And that's what really then helps penetrate these technologies. We'll move to Rahul, and you are part of Kamaz Motors, which focuses to a very large extent on the heavy duty trucks, right? And would just want to understand from you, for the benefit of all of us, what sort of use cases are you seeing which are unique to heavy duty trucks when it comes to these technologies?
See, digitalization and telematics, it has given basically, as he was mentioning, 5 years before current and another 5 years, if you see like that, the next generation entrepreneurs, their family business, they have joined. So they understand the technology better. They understand the use cases of technology, the advantages. But again, what he has also mentioned, we as Indians, even if we go to hotel, we see right side of the menu card first and then we see the left side. So that is the case. Everybody wants everything free and yesterday basis. But today is already late. So that from service point of view, we see telematics has given advantage, and it has come to a fair this thing where previously fights were there. So currently it's like technology which is answering you right now. It's not human beings. And ADAS, another thing, I think in off-road vehicle, it will take time, maybe 10 years plus, because off-road, you don't have markings, another thing. So that is what I feel in off-road vehicles.
Sure. Thanks, Rahul. We move now to Tansher and wouldn't get the customer voice in, and which is why I wanted the others to speak first, and then we'll come to ma'am for the regulatory perspective. But Tansher, just to understand from you, the pandemic has been challenging for multiple sectors, right? There's only agriculture sector which sort of was given a freeway that you can still operate through the pandemic. Most sectors saw a disruption. Transportation in particular saw a squeeze on the cash flow front to begin with in the early part of the pandemic. Keeping that in mind, how do you see the relevance and benefits of these technologies, whether it is ADAS, telematics, or connected vehicle, in your fleet? And if you could give some real examples of how you see the benefits for all of us to appreciate these big words.
Firstly, thank you for having me here. I'm a relatively small fleet owner of 200 trucks, but we have mostly BS4 and BS6 trucks. So I was an early adopter of Entangles as well as Ashok Leyland's iAlert. And we also go for technologies which are beyond ADAS. So for example, we went for tubeless tires very early in 2018. And because of vehicle fuel monitoring and vehicle fuel consumption, we were able to find an 8 to 9% less consumption of diesel in tubeless tire trucks. So again, it is the real world mixed with the digital world that gives you the real results. So because those tires were saving diesel, I was able to identify because of the devices available which was monitoring this. And we were able to, I mean, if you think about 8% diesel saved, so a total TCO, 50% of it is diesel. And if you can save 10% of that, can you imagine the growth that can be unlocked? And that was only possible because of telematics.
Very, very interesting. I think that builds the case for adoption of these technologies, right? So just to follow up on that, Tansher, then what is really prohibiting this? Because these offerings are there in the market. You're seeing benefit from these offerings, which is substantial, 8% on the largest cost head. What is stopping us then?
So I think to build something for India, one needs to go to the ground of India. So I mean, my advice to people would be in this panel and to other people who are producing such devices is to consult with single vehicle owners rather than the big startups that are funded, because very often they also don't know what's happening on the ground. So it's really important to go to like the traditional parts of Sanjay Gandhi Transport Nagar, of the place where the true trucking of India is happening, which is the 90% of trucking. Understand their problems as to what exactly they want from this device. What I see is most people are building for the world, but we should build for India specifically because we're going to have a huge growth of these devices here, and there's a huge scope of growth of scale in this country.
Sure, that's really interesting. Of course, hearing from the customer really what their needs are, I think that's the most informed decision that a manufacturer or a service provider can take. Coming to you, Ujjwala ma'am, and really looking forward to your perspectives on, as a regulator, what are the challenges that you see or you foresee in regulating or certifying vehicles with ADAS, and especially given that there are a lot of aftermarket installations. And right now we're seeing, say, the OE segment come with it and some organized service providers, but when these become more prevalent, aftermarket is going to pick up even more. And you also see testing beyond the regulations, right, as a critical component.
Thank you for this question, actually, bringing this question of regulations. There will be a lot of contradictions on regulations on terms when I was talking to look at the perspective, he said, the inputs have to come from the ground people to build your solutions or build your devices. So we're looking at two perspectives, a ground up and a top down, where we're talking about an industry which is driving pace, case, ACE, whatever it is. So technologies which are through this. When it comes to India, I'm just trying to connect a global case with what he is trying to say, what is needed for India. So it is a case for mobility case for India, what I always called. It's connected to address the challenge of traffic jams, if driving Bangalore, Pune, how it can help, shared and connected. A is not for autonomous for me. A is more for affordable and reaching people. See, it is not affordable, it is also accessible to the people. Third, C is, S for me is safe, which is bringing in the safety. So creating the values for the people there. And E is not only for electrified, but it is basically the environment friendly and driving energy independence for India. So looking from the government perspective, these are real our challenges, maybe from the top level. Of course, the bottom-up values have to be added to this. But when it comes to regulations, see, there are two aspects of looking at regulations. Regulations ensure that there are minimum qualities which are, quality gates which are addressed here. Look at the solutions that we are talking about on infotainment, getting informations. It's a basic electronics. Actually, it should be at least EMC compliant. That's the basic thing that we are looking at. See, why EMC compliant? You have the lot of electronics added into the systems, what it can create. Just go back few years back, having a TV with a mobile phone kept nearby, you can feel that disturbance which is happening nearby. So it's a very basic thing that needs to be there as a EMC compliance. So that's a basic thing. Then that's a regulation today. What we have for anything on electronics which goes onto the vehicle. Now, beyond that there has become application. So when it becomes infotainment system, I don't think there are any more regulations rather than EMC today in the market. But what we are talking about is having their own reliability standards. See, reliability standards are beyond the regulations. As OE or as a tier 1 or as even a startup, what they really need to have is bringing the value as a usefulness as well as life, a longevity to it and usefulness to it. So reliability is a key factor when any electronics is being introduced. When I'm saying electronics is hardware and software both actually together. Hardware-wise, it has to be reliable in terms of temperature differences that we do have in India, the humidity, the rain. You can see a lot of videos where there are challenges which is happening with the rains, electric vehicle running in the EVs on the vehicle and so on and so forth in the rains and parts. So that's a reliability which is a very important perspective when hardware goes in. When it goes to software, again the software reliability is very important. When I'm saying 2 plus 2 has to be 4, it has to be 4 all the time. Come what may the cases, it may be inputs. So looking at a reliability is very important. Hardware reliability, we have the different matrices and logs. Apart from that, functional safety. When you go to the control system part of it, like somebody, you're giving indications, it's all right. You're giving warnings, it's all right, it's only indication. But when we are talking to have the controls of it, we have to have a functional safety. Otherwise, many times the accidents which will happen, which are not intended to happen that way. So something fails in, it is normal failure. Something fails in by not having the performance or having the performance wrongly done is really a challenge for us. And this is a challenge as we are increasing the electronics content of it. So as a regulator, I personally, I'm not a regulator as an individual, but as ARI, what I really look into is ensuring a minimum quality gates, as well as look into the perspective of India needs, try to have the use cases which can be validated to have the reliable product as output, which the ultimate need is. And I don't have to really talk about ADAS. ADAS is a really very good to, or very near to my heart today. As the name suggests, it is advanced driver assist system. So what it really means is us going to assist the drivers. Now, as you said, probably we have to trickle the applications to suit the Indian needs to create a value for India. But that creating value for India is very important. Maybe only 20% of technology is needed to address our 80% of challenges. That might be true. But what is the focus, what should be the focus is a solution that is going to be creating value for India for applications. So I'm just trying to not the trades, what everybody has said, saying that how it is. So something which is implemented here, unless it is tested for the Indian use cases, is not going to be applicable. Coming into ADAS, look at our infrastructure is so different. The linguistic signboards are different. Creating a database for India-specific traffic conditions, infrastructure, as well as the vehicles by themselves is going to be different. If you really look into the global vehicles coming into market and trying to adapt it here, see, bigger OEMs will create their own databases by themselves. They have to, because if they have to go in the market, they have to create their own databases, which is going to suit for India. But what will happen to the people who are developing here, the startups, the OEs, the tier 1s, and the people who are trying to create differences? So have to have the databases, updated databases for the vehicle classes, the infrastructure, the traffic signs, the linguistic differences, those are there, which will get understood by the ADAS teams as well as the use cases. Like AEB, I always will say AEB is upcoming standard and regulations up there. See, as a global player, we have to follow the global regulations, WP29 SINE, so we can't go much away from that. But we have to look also, what are our use cases in automotive emergency braking? How the reverse vehicle being addressed, how the left side overtaking is being addressed, how the short distance braking is being addressed. So these use cases may or may not be in the regulations, but have to be addressed so that it becomes more effective for the Indian use cases by themselves. So creating Indian use cases library is something ARA is working very strongly, and I'm having an open invitation to all, like as a OE, as a tier 1, as a service provider, or a user who feels these are the key use cases which needs to be looked into to ensure the quality may not be as a regulation, but for the validation matrix, I think I invite all to get connected. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Those are really important points you made. Regulating for having a basic minimum quality, ensuring reliability, looking at Indian use cases, and of course, a lovely invitation to all of you all as well. Sankalp, on a related note, I'll come to you. Some of these technologies, especially that we've seen recently, there's been a regulatory push for them, right? For example, if you look at reverse parking sensors for cars, if you look at all-day headlamps for two-wheelers, do you think in this case, and keeping in mind what Tansher said, that there is advantage already, right? But do you still think for the larger population of transporters to adopt it, do you still need a regulatory push for these technologies?
Thanks a lot, Pushan, for the question. So I strongly feel that regulations or regulatory bodies definitely play a very crucial role in terms of technology adoption. But I think to adopt technology, especially in the Indian ecosystem, we need to understand what their core problems are, ideally, and we need to start addressing them first. Of course, because it requires multiple stakeholders in this, especially in an Indian ecosystem for newest technology. There is a lot of apprehension at the moment in terms of adopting technology, because especially in commercial vehicle field, we still have a lot of traditional players, who are reluctant for change. Plus, we also see a lot of, there is a lot of lack of illiteracy in terms of digitization for that matter. Plus, we also have another set of driver fraternity or driver community whom we need to uplift at the same time. So, in terms of adopting technologies, definitely regulations do give a key push because if it's a regulation, definitely everybody has to comply to. For example, now we jump from BS4 straight to BS6, or we have some other regulations also. So it definitely pushes. But I think it's like a collaborative effort, with all the stakeholders, right from the regulatory bodies, the OEMs, technology developers, technology producers like us. So, I think it's a collaborative effort of all of that for this entire puzzle to be solved. And that then technology adoption will be a lot more simpler in that way, because right now, as I see, it's quite market fragmented also at the same time, because now we use terms like AI and so commonly. A couple of years ago, we were not even talking about this jargon. I would like to call it that. But now it's become like a school book term, honestly, and everybody's using AI. But what is really also happening at the same time is, others are kind of using these terms, to confuse somebody, and then they kind of create that chaos or irregularities within the industry, and that I also see as a challenge for others to adopt to new technology, because they are unable to deliver what they commit. So commitments are big, and so I think we need to, even regulatory bodies should, I think, also focus on regulating, everybody's claims are for that matter. So I think it's like a collaborative effort I see here. Of course, just to answer that or to close it, yes, definitely regulations do play a very important role in terms of adopting technology, but I think it's collaborative efforts of everybody, especially, thought leadership, OEMs, industry veterans, even traditional players for that matter, technology providers like us. All of us, we should have a collaborative effort to boost technology within the Indian ecosystem.
Great, thanks, Sankalp. You made two really critical points. One is on the collaboration, and I think that's where forums like these, where you can have an open conversation about from various stakeholders, where you can openly express what you feel like, and the chat that we were having before that also really helps. The second one, very interestingly, how people are claiming, right, AI, and maybe ma'am can tell us a little more about what could be a potential solution, because yes, these are buzzwords. Nobody wants to be behind. There is funding involved. There are so many stakeholders involved, and you need to be on the same bandwagon. So we're through with at least one round of questioning and questions, and what we'll do is we'll have another round, maybe a quicker one, because right now we're like the speed breaker between the audience and the lunch. So keeping that in mind, we'll have just maybe one quick round of 10 minutes, and then maybe a 5-minute round with the audience if they have any questions. So Krishna, I'll start with you, and what I would want to understand from you is that the Indian market is dominated by small fleet operators, and I would love that the Indian market would be dominated by small fleet operators like you, because quintessentially that would be the definition of a large fleet operator, right? So talking about transporters who own less than 5 trucks, single owner, driver, operated market, extremely value conscious. How do you see the business models evolve for this particular segment, right? Can you go the traditional Western way with this, and how are the pricing challenges really? Finally it comes to that, right, for adoption.
Right. Yeah, that's actually a great question. And, the point there is that, smaller organizations cannot handle a lot of complexity because they have to focus on the real business, right? At the end of the day, we should realize that we are all trying to provide some value-added service to them, and that their core business is actually in moving goods, right? They can't take time off moving goods and focus on your beautiful UI, right? That's not the goal. So I think integration will be a key thing. Integration is really key, and if I were a small fleet, right, I would want one person who I could turn to for all my technology needs, right? I don't want to deal with one person for track and trace, one person for fuel, one person for optimizing my logistics and routing, one person for video, that's absolutely nonsensical, right? I would not wish that on anybody, right? And on that point, I think both the OEs and the regulators can play a huge role in also assuring the smaller operators that the claims here made by this organization are reasonably true. They may not be specifically true in every condition, but on an average, it is right. Because what we have heard from smaller businesses, not just in India, even abroad, is that they don't have the wherewithal or the capacity to vet complicated technologies. When somebody comes and claims A, B, C, D, E, especially when AI gets involved, right? You can claim all sorts of things and say, this is how AI works. It can't work in every situation, right? I get it. It can't work in every single test case. But, I think for a smaller business to adopt it, I think OEs fitting them, because OEs, there's a lot of, people, we believe them, right? If a Daimler or a Volvo were to say something, we take them at face value, versus a small company like me claiming something, right? Bigger fleets will, of course, put you through the paces. They have a detailed purchasing section. They'll put you through all the paces. So 2 things, integration and having some kind of approval by people who they trust inherently more than somebody who's trying to raise the next round, maybe, right?
Fair enough. Really, again, very important. In terms of, the claims, of course, how there's so many offerings in the market, how do you really differentiate between the claims before using them? They're coming to you now, and we've been talking about penetration of these technologies, usage, adoption, all of that. But from an OEM perspective, which are the segments that you see being early adopters for these technologies? We have, multiple segments within medium and heavy commercial vehicles. You have right from the multi-axle vehicle to the tippers to the trailers. There are also application-specific. You have port-specific applications. You have, the runs of 400 kilometers a day, some doing larger runs, and the baton being passed. Where do you see these technologies getting adopted first?
Yeah, so giving from the perspective of an OE, so we see these long-haul trucks. So that would be our first penetration, yeah, for all these technology things, because there it makes absolute sense and value, and this is also the ask of our customers. So we have this truck clinics, we call it our customer key points, where we collect the data. And this is where for all the heavy duty vehicles, that would be our first penetration of all this. And now when we are talking about this electric, yeah, so this is also something as a OE we are transforming, yeah, so from the typical ICE engines to electric. So there we see a chance to introduce all this upfront, because this is something that it's not a staged manner here, so where we can get our customers, our drivers educated to this new technology and the way it is, yeah, so because there is a lot of legacy behind the way we used to perform and work. But with electrification and electric trucks, so it's also easy for us to educate the drivers, as he said, yeah, illiteracy, so which also helps. So when you are using an electric truck, then these are the basic qualifications as a driver you need to have, how to operate, how to deal with things. And this is where we would like to bring in the technology. So he gets used to it and more acquainted, so that the future the future penetration could be much more faster and quicker for us.
Sure, makes sense. And I'll come on the literacy question. I think it's very important. A couple of us have touched upon it. Maybe Tansher, later on I'll come to you on that. Sankal, before that, if we can be, talk about the real benefits. We've spoken about adoption and various other aspects, but for the benefit of all of us, what are the real benefits that a fleet operator can see? Maybe let's take an example of, say, preventive maintenance, right? In your view, how do you see that? What is the savings or the revenue benefit that the transporter can get through that?
So thanks a lot, Bhushan, for asking the question. In fact, we've been doing preventive or predictive maintenance for quite some time now. It's been over 6 years we are in this and promoting preventive maintenance and true preventive maintenance in a way. So honestly speaking, the minimum saving that we have experienced, and I'm talking about statistical data that we have been, through our enormous customer list. Just by preventive maintenance alone, you can easily achieve a minimum saving of about 12 to 30% in breakdowns. 12 to 30, yeah, because the reason for that is preventive maintenance gives any fleet operator that added advantage or benefit in terms of you can identify any potential issues that are going to occur in a vehicle. You identify, fix that at a very fraction of a cost, and if you do not address it, it's an imminent or a catastrophic failure or a breakdown on road. So now the cost conversion in terms of preventive maintenance, is at a minuscule in terms of the overall the cost that you would save. The other benefit is just using advanced telematics technology. You can also identify those key driver parameters wherein you need to, because the driver is the key focal point in this entire organization of commercial vehicle space, I would say, because we develop for transporters. But all of us over here are developing technology for the transporters, but at the end, a transporter is also dependent on a driver. So how the telematics can, affect the overall driver fraternity, and how can we uplift or better their driving habits or patterns, or identify those key points in wherein you can do the savings. Just by doing that, we have achieved a minimum of, or our customers would have easily achieved a minimum of a boost of about 5 to 8% in their fuel economy. A minimum of 5 to 8%. The numbers are a lot higher than that, but I'm being very, very conservative here. Now, reducing, using preventive maintenance practices or, predictive alerts, you are potentially saving a breakdown. That also results in higher uptime of your vehicles. Now this also results in your better operational efficiencies overall. So because a breakdown saved is that more number of kilometers that truck is going to clock. Our customers have actually decided not to buy higher trucks and optimize their existing fleet. How they can do it using data and telematics data that we have provided them. And with all of this, they are able to achieve an uptime or improved uptime of about 15%, because they have reduced their breakdowns, their overall operational insights through which we help them optimize their existing operations and everything put together. So these are just some numbers that we have. So definitely it saves on a lot of costs in terms of the maintenance. It does a lot of saving in terms of your fuel economies, how to implement and how to improve them, uptime of the vehicles, and by having healthy or good maintenance practices or service practices, you are basically also extending the longevity or the life of the vehicle. So now we have a scrappage policy, but at least until the 15 years of the vehicle's life, the vehicle's upkeep, if the vehicle's upkeep is maintained, as it should and as per the OEM standards, because in India we still have a lot of substandard or non-standardized parts that are available of the market, and just for saving a fraction of a cost, a traditional transporter, an operator might go towards it or bend towards it. But with our data, we can also help them with advanced telematics. We can help them what are the impacts that is going to cause, and what should be the best practices they should adopt to. So these are some numbers, I think. Yeah.
Sure.
We can take 3 to 4 questions for that. and then
Sure. All right. Yeah. So any questions from the audience? Yeah, if there's a mic on the floor, if that can be given to that gentleman there.
Yes, thank you. Hi, this is Pushkar here. My question is for Mr. Tansher Singh. What would you say are your 2 topmost pain points that you would like to see them solved? Very India specific, because your things that you said that that resonates very well with me, that we have to solve the problems here. So could you state that, please?
You mean generally in India?
Generally, not
telematics
specifically.
related.
Yeah, because you represent the consumer side of things. So what do you think in general this industry top 2 or 1 or 2 problems that you think are not solved? We need to solve those things.
The first is labor shortage. I think drivers need to be respected a lot more than they're currently respected. And that will happen by not just doing lip service. See, I know a lot of large fleet operators and they all respect their drivers. So it's not us anymore. The businesses are already respecting drivers. The government needs to start respecting drivers. The RTOs need to start respecting drivers. And the people who harass them is the government mostly. It's the law enforcement, it's the police. They need to start respecting drivers, and adoption of all this technology will happen automatically. So it shouldn't be lip service, because empathy comes from within, and you can feel the empathy when it comes. Many people don't actually have that empathy, but they show it to raise money, to do whatever. But once people have that empathy from drivers from within, this problem will be solved at scale. And the second, I would say, the problem that we need to solve in India is little bit of, again, education about this kind of stuff. I don't believe that people are talking enough about privacy and freedom. So the data that a lot of these telematics are producing are not accessible to me. Believe it or not, Ashok Leyland's trucks captures data which I have to go to Ashok Leyland Center to get. It's my truck. I bought this truck. I want the data of this truck, because because we should not go down the route of greater good. In name of greater good, we shouldn't have greater control. They should be very careful of privacy, and the data should be used it should be available to us, and it should not be used to control us. I am seeing in the news that cars are being heated on a subscription service nowadays, car seats. So we shouldn't go down that route at all. That would be my view.
Thank you so much, sir. One last question we'll take, then we'll break for lunch. Whatever more questions we have, we can take it in the networking lunch session. So one last question, anybody from the audience?
Do we have someone in the audience?
Yeah, just one last question if you want to take from somebody from the audience.
Or else, I have a question for Ujjwala ma'am, which topic that we didn't touch upon till then, if there's no audience question there, is on safety, right? And roads are responsible for so many accidents. And how do you see the usage of these technologies on, enhancing safety for our roads?
So you mean the technologies for enhancing safety on the roads, right? On the roads, right? So multiple things like simple warnings, as you were saying, which we have to derive for use cases of India, is going to give the alarms for the users. Like simple is driver drowsiness systems. The way he has been talking about, or we know that technologically how the driver drowsiness systems work, like face recognition, movement of eyelids, and such kind of things. If you really look into the Indian use cases, do you really think that the driver drowsiness is based only by lip movements. People normally would have the normal head movements, hand movements, other movements, which could easily tell about the drowsiness. See, the data says that 80% of accidents do happen with the driver's mistakes or negligence or whatever you want to call it as. But then if the drivers are being helped with it to take that right decisions. But it's also the case where people talk about the humans are the best drivers. So that we should have a driver or ADAS or autonomous so that they have this driver empathy or driver behavior modeling coming into picture so that they can really drive as if they are real humans. So it's contradictory and contrasting at the same time. So what is important there is simple. Normally, human is a very good driver and a great driver. That's where we have to really respect them. But for a movement where it really misses and gives that excuse, if we can have a good warnings or alarms to them and educate them to how to handle those alarms, this is going to give a lot of impact on the safety. That's what my personal strength belief is. So we call it ADAS 1, 0, 2, 3, 4, whatever it is. But something which is useful for the Indian use cases, it could be a driver monitoring, blind spot monitoring, such kind of systems which could be very, very effective in Indian use cases, I believe. Right, thank you.
So I think with that, we'll close this session. Some of the key takeaways for me, at least from this session, have been like regulating for ensuring minimum quality and safety, collaborating, like conversations like these so that everyone's on a similar page, listening to the voice of the customer and having that empathy in building and providing your services, I think extremely critically. And there is benefit that we're all seeing in terms of the quantum for the people who are expected to buy this service. It's about literacy, education, so that the penetration and awareness can be improved, and then the penetration of these services can be improved. With that, I'll thank each one of our eminent panelists. Thank you for your time, and I hope all of us have some takeaways from this session. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for this wonderful session. Thank you so much for joining us here.